Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the joint meeting of the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission. It is Monday, and it is August the 30th. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting and may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Can I get a roll call, please, starting with the members of the Historical Commission? Connie Sewell.
Present.
Richard Mancini.
Present.
Ruben
Via
Amaral.
Zoom.
Present.
And Kristen Cantera Oliveira, present, attending remotely. And tonight, all of the members of the Historical Commission are appearing by Zoom. Also, we are missing Joyce Rodricks this evening, and we have 2 open seats on the Historical Commission. Now I will do a roll call for the Historic District Commission. Connie Sewell.
Present.
Richard Mancini.
Here.
Jason Bouchard-Naraki.
Present.
And Kristen Cantera Oliveira, present, attending remotely. And again, all members of the Historic District Commission are also attending remotely by Zoom. We are missing 3 members. I'm sorry, we have 3 open seats on the Historic District Commission. So first on the agenda are the minutes from May 17th, 2021, and this is for first for the Historical Commission. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes for May 17th.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote on that. Connie Sewell,
Yes.
Richard Mancini,
Yes.
Ruben Amaral,
Yes.
and Kristen Cantera Oliveira, yes. So motion carries. Now, I also have the minutes from May 17th, 2021 for the Historic District Commission. So I'm going to do a roll call for that. Connie Sewell.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need a
Yeah,
motion.
we need a
I
motion.
need a
I
motion.
make a motion to approve the minutes for May 17th for the Historic Commission. I mean, for the local.
Historic
Historic.
District Commission.
Yes.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Roll call for that. Connie Sewell.
Yes.
Richard Mancini,
Yes.
Jason Bouchard-Naraki,
Yes.
Kristen Cantera Oliveira. Motion carries, so the minutes are approved for the District Commission as well. And then last, I have the minutes from June 1st, 2021, and that's just for the Historical Commission. So can I get a motion for those minutes, please?
I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes of the meeting.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Connie Sewell,
Yes.
Richard Mancini,
Yes.
Ruben Amaral,
Yes.
Kristen Cantera Oliveira. I vote yes, so the motion carries and those minutes are approved as well. We did not have any minutes from the District Commission as we did not meet on that day. So next on the agenda, we have our continuing discussion about historic preservation guidelines with Dominique Hawkins. So Dominique is here with us again this evening. Hello, welcome.
Hi, get my
Hello,
glass of water
Dominique.
out of the way. How are you all tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So I am going to be getting Ida on Wednesday. And a chance for thunderstorms today, so it's summer in the city.
Fun.
Yeah. First I want to ask, were there any questions from our last meeting or thoughts in the middle of the night that you thought, oh, I wish I had told her? Or we forgot to cover, or anything that you want to add? Just keep plowing ahead. Okay. So I'm sticking with the July 23rd agenda I had sent out, and next on the list is site elements on our list. And this is one of those places where jurisdictionally, a lot of communities have varying degrees of jurisdiction. So if you could bear with me, or let me rephrase. So we have to be careful about how we use words regarding suggesting things or recommending things versus really saying you have to do it this way in site elements. And that is particularly dependent on how your jurisdiction is written in terms of whether you have jurisdiction of the ground. And the ground means paving, asphalt, that sort of stuff. So anything that is horizontal to the ground. Most places, jurisdiction starts coming up out of the ground. Usually it's at least 12 inches. So if it's not a granite curb, so to speak, but it is a little low wall, that's at least 12 inches or more. So it depends on the jurisdictional relationship. And you may actually not even have it defined in your ordinance, and that's okay too. So, but we can make suggestions.
Yes.
Yes, yes, sounds good. Okay. So for fences, walls, and gates, those are sort of the easiest to deal with. So walls are pretty much stone in Fall River, and I'm imagining that that is the preference, and potentially brick, although I didn't really see brick walls. Is that correct? Okay, nodding heads. How
Yes.
about cast stone? So sort of the concrete blocks made to look like stone.
No.
Is that an everybody no or a Connie no?
It's definitely a Connie no.
I second that.
Yeah, and definitely no.
Okay.
Hmm.
So we're really talking about brick or real stone. How about stucco?
I don't think we
Stucco
have.
applied properly and used judiciously is not a bad option,
Okay.
in
So
my
potential.
opinion.
Do we have any houses though in the district where they would use stucco on a
No,
wall?
but
Because
people have gone over their granite foundation with stucco.
Okay.
And the people with the, we've seen concrete block with stucco finishes on it. And we do have those around here.
So and it's more because you guys have such steep hills that people may be using them as retaining walls. So an option that's less costly, like a concrete block with stucco, I think is something good to have as an availability, but maybe something against covering over natural stone or brick with stucco.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sure, yes.
How
Yeah, I
about-
can't see covering granite with stucco. I think that would look terrible.
Okay. How about fences and gates? So fences, historically fences and gates were either wood or you might get some iron in them. More recent materials include different kinds of PVC materials as well as vinyl products.
Again, I would have to say natural product like wood or iron.
Wood, iron, and perhaps aluminum, which is what a lot of the, I'll say, picket fences are made out of now. Aluminum, black, simple.
I'm not really familiar with that particular
Yeah,
product.
They look very similar.
I don't
to
know.
mine.
Are you thinking of, Dominique, of not using any of the synthetic materials at all? Is that?
I'm not thinking of anything. I'm asking the questions. This is
Well,
not.
I know, but you, as you presented, are we going to stipulate no synthetic materials?
Jurisdictionally, I have to see what your ordinance says. If a structure is considered a fence, you will have jurisdiction. So I think you probably have jurisdiction on fences.
So actually, the original study report that we did not include additional we did not.
Landscape elements?
We did, that's right, we did not.
Okay,
And it was done intentionally, like I said, it was the preservation side that led that up at the time, but it was done intentionally because we didn't want to be over restrictive. We wanted to make it amenable.
so.
And there are two areas here, I would think. There's one is, what do we want to possibly perceive to have as construction materials in the future, or for areas that we're not really focused on. So someone might want some information on what can I do here for fencing. And that's going to be part of this presentation, is to start showing them alternatives. So it would, I
Recommendations.
think, be a good thing to put some alternatives in there.
Yeah.
And there are, if in the older climate, you might have taken planks, maybe tongue and groove, or alternated the planks and built out of wood. But using some synthetic material wouldn't be harmful. You probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two materials. So in those
I will disagree with
cases-
that. I will disagree with that. I think synthetic, you can tell the difference because the connections are different. A lot of the synthetic materials that are used are actually PVC materials, and it has sort of clunkier connections because they're sleeved connections, they're not nailer connections.
Okay.
So
But the aluminum that you're referring to does connect that, does it connect like an iron fence connects and that sort of thing?
no, so the parts all slide.
Oh, we're all frozen here.
No, Dominique's frozen.
It must be Philadelphia.
There she is.
Okay. So
Uh-uh.
Oh, no. Yeah, I think it's on her connection.
Oh, it's a nice photo, Dominique.
At least she doesn't sound like a chipmunk.
That's true.
Ruben, are you familiar with the aluminum fencing she's referring to?
I am.
Is it like what they have up at the Highland Park? Or what they put in front of the Central Congregation Church, the Abbey Grill?
I mean, I see the one up at the park at Highland Park actually is bowing down, like when it's warm and when it's really hot. It literally looks like it's melting, is what it looks like to me.
I
Is
mean,
that
it
what
looked
they
very,
put in- oh, sorry.
good.
Oh, no, is that the same type of fence that they put in front of the little theater in that little pocket park?
The green,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. yeah, that is. I just, my fear on having aluminum is, will it fade? That's my one question on aluminum, because I know I've seen aluminum, like black aluminum that is supposed to look like wrought iron before, and it fades a little bit. The color just, it doesn't look right. So that's my concern with it. Not that it doesn't look good initially, because the fence that's actually around that green next to Little Theater, it actually looks very nice. You know, from a distance, I wouldn't be able to tell that it's not wrought iron.
Yeah, it will fade because it's powder coated.
Yeah, that's the concern.
But it
So-
will accept paint, so you could, if you have to paint it
Well, yeah, that's
later
true.
time, you could paint
Yeah.
it. In the fiber, the miscellaneous synthetic materials, I was thinking of fences or gates that are almost like bond board. They're whatever the height might be, but you're using 6 or 8 inch wide materials.
So guys, because this is a recommended only, you can recommend the best, right? So you can recommend the wood, the iron, and potentially the aluminum. Those are the best. And dissuade people from vinyl and chain link fences. Those are the worst. And you're not regulating it anyway, but you're providing guidance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, that's the thing, because we're using these guidelines to determine what we're actually going to accept within the 40C district. But these guidelines are for anybody in the city, so not everybody's going to want to follow it to a T, nor do they have to if it's somewhere else in the city. But we still want to make sure that we have those options available for them. Like, yes, you can use this. It's not what we prefer. But if they're in the district, they have to come before us anyway, regardless. Any kind of work that they're going to do in the property, they're going to have to come before us. So that at that point, we have that chance to say, no, in the district, we do not allow this. Yes, it says it in the guidelines only because that goes out to everybody in general that's working on any kind of historic property. But in the district, we do make the final determination, and we do or do not accept, whatever we might, have put into the book, we may not necessarily allow it in the district. So.
Okay, so similarly, I think on any sort of paved surfaces, again, you don't regulate, but you can suggest. So, like a brick walkway is a nice thing. Concrete is acceptable. If somebody used pavers, the colored kind of pavers that are cast, basically pavers, those are generally okay to simulate brick or something along those lines. Belgian block, whatever it might be, gravel driveways, kind of all of that stuff is fine. And encouraging people to have, well, say less asphalt and more other materials is preferred. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
Yes.
So I have landscape features and tree preservation. Some people have a sort of arborists who make recommendations to the community or tree preservation programs. You guys have an amazing tree canopy. Is this something you want to discuss? Is it handled elsewhere? It's just a single line item, or ignore it entirely?
I think it's handled elsewhere, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to reinforce the importance of canopy.
Okay.
Maybe a nod or a referral to the Fall River Street Tree Program.
Got it.
I actually had somebody ask me today if we can put a preservation restriction on a tree.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah, that's what I had thought, because I said, even if you were to put a restriction on it, at some point, if the tree dies, you can't tell them, no, you can't cut the tree down because the tree is dead. It becomes a possible danger or whatever. So.
But if the house is on fire, you can't save that either. So I think that's one of those things that, yeah, but the reality is you don't want to get into being the tree police. You should have some arborist or, some municipal code that deals with, trees, and don't get into being the tree police. That will make you crazy. Why can't I cut this one if I save that one? You don't want to go there. Okay. Streetscape improvements. Now, this is one that we could use as part of commercial buildings, or we could just handle with commercial buildings. This is one of those things. Some municipalities, particularly ones that are more commercial, will regulate things like the garbage cans, the benches for bus stands. How many, if the ice cream parlor wants to put a bench out front, they could get into regulating that. Other people say, you know what, it's just furniture. Go for it. But it tends to be something that's a little more commercial than it is residential. You guys aren't, your buildings really aren't right on the sidewalk. They're set back from the street. So I don't think it's particularly pertinent to use. So unless you guys feel strongly about it, I'm recommending we get rid of it. Okay, okay, we can handle some level of it when we get into the commercial properties. Okay, small structures. So think about the tool sheds, the pool, the thing to run the pool equipment, the dog house, the kids' playhouse. How much do you want to talk about this stuff? If it's under a certain size and it comes off the side, back of a truck, is it furniture or is it a structure that you have to discuss?
I think what we've done in the past with anything, we had an issue come up with a shed, and it was, if you can't see it from the street, then we didn't really get too much concern with it. Whereas if it's something that you can see from the street, then we did. The one person that had come before us, we asked to have the shed look, if they couldn't move it, to have it look as close to the makeup of the house as possible, to have it match. So I think in that case it would be, a dog house, I don't think, and the playhouse hasn't come up yet. But again, I think if it's something that you can't see from the street, it's not really an issue. But if it's something that will be visible, then we would like it to be in keeping historically with what the house is.
Okay, and
I'm sorry. I would say that temporary structures should not be in our purview, but I think similar to walkways and fences, it should be something we're making recommendations on.
Yeah, but a shed's not temporary. Not really.
a temporary thing would be a tent or maybe a trampoline or, something along those lines.
That we don't.
Yeah.
But the original study group is based on 47 historical properties. And I just think, we're not trying to preserve a new shed. I just think we should tread cautiously.
I agree with Kristen. I think it should be something that complements. If you can see it, it should complement the neighborhood. It should complement the home.
Classic materials.
With classic materials, that's
Right.
exactly it.
Right,
The situation that Kristen was talking about, it was visual from more than just one street. It was visual
Right.
from two streets.
I buy that premise also.
So we're going to discourage sort of the aluminum off the shelf, thing you buy at Home Depot, so to speak, if it's visible.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And not to pick on Home Depot, but you can, if they were to come up with a shed, a garage, any small structure, and that sort of includes all of those sorts of little things under 500 square feet. If you came up with one of those that was complementary to the architectural style and materials of the main house, and that would be something that would be considered.
Right.
Yes.
And we're not talking like the people that go and they buy the plastic playhouses for their kids, the one that you can kind of put together and take apart. That's not what we mean. We mean like if you're building a playhouse for your child and that playhouse is going to be there for years and years, or you're building something in the tree and it's really visible from the street, or a shed that's going to last for a lot of years. That's what we mean. We don't mean like the temporary playhouse that's going to be there for a couple of years, or a swing set or anything like that. That's not what we mean.
Okay.
Jason, did you have something to say? You had looked like you were going to say something before.
Oh, no, I was just adding that we didn't want, we wouldn't want, it was already addressed, the plastic sheds that, come in a box and you could assemble it in your backyard. Like we wouldn't want that invisible to the street or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I've gotten a sense of it. So ground mounted equipment is all the sort of mechanical workings. It's the air conditioner unit, it's the generator, potentially solar collectors, all of that sort of stuff. Generally, as you encourage people to either put it in the back of the property where you can't see it, if it's in a location or they don't have a location where that's possible, to screen it with either landscaping or with sort of fencing materials. Is that consistent?
That's fine. Well put, in my opinion.
Okay, or screen. All right. Is there anything else that you can think of that goes sort of on the landscape? Now, we cannot
Lamppost,
regulate. We cannot
Lamp-
regulate. Boats,
lamppost,
RVs. Okay, lampposts.
lighting fixtures.
That's what I was thinking too.
Okay, so I would typically recommend dark skies, meaning nothing shining up, minimize any sort of reflection off the property. Try and light walkways, not the air, so to speak. Is that consistent?
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
Now,
And we ought to, do they generally establish a lumen value?
Most places don't, and the reason being that most historic ordinances do not allow you to regulate the amount of light or the quality of light, only the light fixture itself, because that's the object.
the city itself, I believe, has certain restrictions for lighting. Even, I know they do on commercial buildings, so I would think even on a property.
Mhm.
I don't think in a neighborhood they're gonna allow somebody to have an incredibly blaring light that's gonna illuminate the whole entire neighborhood from their one lamp. I would have to imagine this.
I don't know. I mean, look at the church on Rock Street, that huge sign that they have illuminated all night long
Yeah, the neighbors are actually complaining about
Which
it.
one? Which church?
Rock,
next to,
Rock, next to Charlie Jacobson.
Oh, the one that has like the uplighting on it?
Christ the
I
Rock.
can literally see it from here at
Yeah,
night. It's like
Really?
lit up.
Yeah, we're two,
Yeah.
Oh,
we're
wow.
2 blocks away.
Wow.
Mm.
Anyhow,
Hence again, my question, do they generally limit the lumens?
Not in preservation ordinances,
Okay.
because the ordinance is written to talk about what the fixture is and not the light it produces.
Okay,
Now, what about, because it's an issue here, especially because we have properties that are multiple tenement properties. What about fire escapes? Because that's actually something that has been an issue, where we do have a couple of properties in the district, and one of them, the fire escape is smack in the front of the house, and you can really see it, and it's very
It
to me,
is.
it's yeah, very inappropriate.
Yeah, I forgot about your fire escapes. It's been a minute. So your fire escapes are kind of unique in terms of my history of doing residential historic districts. I've dealt with them in commercial districts. Generally, in most places, they're grandfathered. They no longer allow them. So as soon as it becomes, I'll say, unstable, they require its removal in most places. They won't let you fix it. Or replace it in kind. It's a removal at that point. So if we're going to talk about fire escapes, we should probably do it in the context of the walls of the building. And it's probably more on wood frame construction. So we should add it to that. And if we're going to talk about it as part of the walls, then we're going to encourage that they be located at the rear of buildings or to the side. But I think the larger conversation is, are they even allowed to put a new fire escape on?
I think the building codes here, they have to have the means of egress, and if you have one that's a 3 tenement or even a 2 family but higher up, there needs to have that second or means of egress, and sometimes the only way is a fire escape. And so, but the one that I'm thinking in particular has it right in the front of the house, and it's not good.
I also
So-
think without us having recommendations of where they should put it, I think that the contractor probably looks at the easiest alternative,
Right,
and that's what the homeowner ends up going with.
right. And that's why we really need to address that, because I see it happening again in the future, and I don't want to see another mistake of it being in the front of the house like this one is.
So I agree that you need to have the means of egress. I mean, as an architect, that's required. Okay, so that's just a no-brainer. But the fire escape is an excuse not to have it inside the building, which is where it belongs. It may also end up being in an addition, which is more expensive than putting a fire escape on a building. So what we need to say, and the question is, does it become part of the addition section or maybe part of the exterior woodwork section? And I'm thinking this through as I'm talking, is if you need to add a means of egress out of the building and you need to build an addition to build that addition on the rear, meaning a stair tower on the rear of the building to get people out safely.
That particular dwelling that's being spoken of, the problem there is that the egress and exit is in the rear of the building. So that you can't put a fire escape in the rear of the building when your existing stairwell is running up the back. And that's what happened. It got placed in the front.
Okay, so you need
gotta-
separation. Yeah, you need separation between the two means of egress, and that's
Correct.
where
So
that's
we
where
have to be careful how we word that so that we don't get caught up in a building that has the staircases in the rear and it's a single staircase. Then we don't, we got to be careful how we word it so that we can accommodate the law.
We have the ability to make exceptions. If in that case, if it's in the rear of the house, then obviously there has to be something. If it could come maybe just from the front and then sort of go down the side,
Sure. Oh, yes.
you know,
I agree.
instead of coming right down the front, there's still
Right.
got to be a way for, if you have something, even say it needs to sort of match the front of the house.
Yep.
And then go off to the side and then go down, you can do that, but I still
Sure.
think that it needs to be said, if at all possible, based on the way that the house is laid out, it should be from the back, and if it can't be an enclosed addition, then it needs to at least be a fire escape that goes down the back of the house or down the side where it's least visible. Something to those lines. Does
So
that make
I think the larger question is, should these houses have so many tenants in them? Because if it's a two-story, and I'm assuming the International Building Code, but if it's a two-story residence, then you're not required to have two means of egress. Okay, it's when you put people in the third floor that you require that second means of egress. So if the second and third floor was one apartment, then you wouldn't have to have the fire escape. So is there a larger question to be had or a discussion to be had with the building official or the zoning ordinance that limits any existing residence to a two dwelling situation versus adding 3 or 4 apartments in the same building?
They're probably, we really need to address it as having the 3, because there's just so many houses that have the third floor as a separate tenement that I don't see that being limited by the building department. And especially now with people looking to turn things even more into more tenement houses that people can rent, I think it may be an even bigger issue. So I think it's important to address them as any 3 tenements. And I mean, you can mention if it's a 2, obviously a 2 floor, it doesn't need to be, but I think we do need to go with the option of having 3 tenements.
Okay, so let's think this through. And I think this is something that sort of slots into the additions and addition section more than anything else. So if you're going to be installing a fire escape, it is so you need to establish.
Frozen again.
Uh-oh. I wonder if they're getting a storm down there.
Yeah, maybe this storm is starting already.
I guess Patrick was saying it's raining and quite heavily where he is.
Yeah, he's in Alabama. He's in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Yeah, so he's catching some of it.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, she's back. She's figured out the trick to reboot quickly. So if you need to establish a means of egress, Okay, because that's what we're talking about is a second means of egress. Is it preferable to have that second means be a constructed addition versus a fire escape, if we can do it at the rear?
I would say that would be ideal.
Okay.
No, if it's in the rear, I don't care if it's a fire escape.
It's a lot safer to have an addition, and you can design it better.
A lot
We
more
we
costly.
can, we
Yeah.
can say that it's preferred, but it's not that we have to require it, especially if it's in the rear. Just that it's preferred. But yeah, I mean, not everybody's gonna be up for that because it will be so cost prohibitive for a lot of people.
Agreed, but if you can get away with it, then let's start with saying this is what we prefer, and maybe in the historic district, the city will say, okay, well, this is part of their preference, so this is what we'll encourage. Give it a shot.
That may also distract people from trying to put a third floor apartment in when they really shouldn't.
True.
have one.
Okay, so the preference is for a rear addition as the means of egress. If you have an existing fire escape or are going to install a new fire escape, you want it painted to match the wall color. Is that a fair statement? Okay.
Yes,
Do you want to have the platforms of the fire escape made of wood or something, or have a railing on it so it looks more historic, or just make it metal and as thin as possible?
I'd rather have it disappear into the house somehow.
Yeah.
And the more grand it looks, I think.
Will detract from the
Yeah.
style of the house.
Well, it tends to compete with the architecture, so
Yeah.
so visually it probably disappears best if it's just painted out.
Mhm.
So to the extent possible, you want it located on the rear or as far back on the rear elevation as possible. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yes,
And painted to blend with the coloring on the house.
Okay. Are people putting lights on their fire escape?
I've never seen it. I've never seen one.
No, I mean, I'm asking because if it's the middle of the night and I'm trying to jump out, we were just talking about lighting, right? This is dangerous.
Commercially, you're required by the electrical code in Massachusetts to have a light fixture. That's commercial. But in residential, there's no criteria for that on fire escapes. There is on the residential property on your front and rear doors, but there's no requirement on the fire escape
Okay.
at this point that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is there any other guidance or anything else you can think of that I should add for fire escapes? I'm a little at a loss here. So how about changing windows or modifying window openings on upper floors to get access to the fire escape? Making them into doors? Are people doing that?
The code
Yeah.
requires in Massachusetts, I believe, that a door has to be there, or it has to be a window that opens up as a door. Has to be a hinged assembly if you're keeping a window. If not, you have to put a door, and it can't be a half a door. It's got to be a pretty much full size opening.
So what we're going to recommend is minimal, selecting a location that is minimally visible, that doesn't require alteration of primary windows.
Mhm.
I like that.
That sounds good.
And to meet the local of the Mass code, you can just put a hinge the window.
And so you're recommending that we don't make the size of the window opening any larger.
No, I don't know what the code would do with that. I can't.
Well, we're recommending it. The code official is going to win in the end.
Yeah,
So, no, the code official will win. All we can do is make a recommendation and say, if you can, instead of putting it here, you can move it over there and not modify the window opening, then that's a better answer. That's all this is giving you is a direction to point.
well, that's a good point. We can try for that. As you stated, the worst case is the building inspector will say no.
Okay.
Ruben, have you had any experience with that?
So there is a standard egress size window that they'll accept going to a balcony. What size? I'm not sure. It doesn't have to be hinged though. As long as a firefighter with equipment can enter into the window, then it's acceptable.
In Fall River right now, for a fact, it's gotta be, they're pushing doors in their building code.
Well, there is a legitimate safety concern, and I'm not trying to undermine what that is, but if we can position it, part of the difficulty is that third floor windows tend to be smaller. Is the brick building. So typically a double hung window in the third floor will not work as an egress window by code. Whether it's hinged or not hinged, it will not work.
Mhm.
So it requires modification of that opening in some way.
So I just have this image, like when a firefighter is coming to a house, he's not gonna look for the fire escape window to try to get in, right? Is that how they get in?
He
No.
may, it depends on where the fire is. That's why we have two means of egress.
Hmm.
So there's nothing that we should say that reduces the safety of people.
Right,
There's nothing that we should put into writing that is going to challenge people's public safety. That's where I draw an absolute hard line. So, but what we can do is say, instead of putting it on the front elevation, can you just move it literally around the corner to the first window? You're still hitting that same bedroom, so to speak, in terms of getting somebody out at that corner window. And if we have to change that double hung window at the third floor and instead make it a hinged open door kind of window, and that gets people out safely or the firefighter in safely, then that's what we do. Okay. So in general, how often do you all deal with additions? Not so often?
Very often.
no, not
Okay.
really.
The general criteria for additions are when you can locate them towards the rear of the property. If they're visible, they should be diminutive, meaning they shouldn't be larger than the original house. The ridge or the top of the roof should be lower than the ridge, equal or lower than the ridge of the existing house. If it's a gable roof, the slope of those gables tends to be the same, meaning it's the same kind of formal massing. The same type of windows used in the main house tend to be followed in the addition. So if you have double hung windows in the main house, in the main historic place, you keep doing that. And so it's kind of, use the same vocabulary, just make it a little smaller and scale it down. Basically is the addition, and try and go back versus front, or at least if you have to do it on the side, do it as far back as possible. Does that all sound reasonable?
Yes.
And in terms of materials, if your house is, it also is either equal or I'll say diminished materials. So if you have a stone house, you can either a stone, stucco, or wood framed addition. If you have a stucco house, which you don't have, you can do stucco or wood frame, but you'd never do a stone addition, and you'd never put a stone addition on a wood house. It sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but you'd be surprised what people come up with. So those tend to be the basic rules. And does that sound about what you guys are shooting for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So in your historic district, you don't have a lot of room for new construction, but new construction,
goodness.
thank goodness, you're very lucky. But new construction tends to be, I'll say, have similar setbacks to its neighboring properties. So if everything is 20 feet back from the sidewalk, then the new construction would be 20 feet back from the sidewalk. Try and keep similar kinds of side yards. So the distance between the side property lines and the main residence. The front door should be pointed in the same direction as the front. Again, all sounds really obvious until it's not. And if everybody on the block has a front porch, then the new building should also have a front porch. Those are sort of, the basic rules. If everything's 2.5 stories tall, they should be 2.5 stories tall. But within your district, you have a lot of variation in architectural style. So it's not really going towards speaking of you have to do this style versus that style, but it's saying look around at your neighbors as a guide to what to do. And you're really looking at form and massing. But as we previously discussed, you are okay with some level of, I'll say, synthetic material, like the cementitious board siding, for example. So you're not requiring authentic materials. 100%. Did I get that accurately?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's important to say, well, you're wording it the best way, but we don't want someone to build an A-frame among us. Not that they can't build, they can build something, but it should be in like similar form.
Right. So we're more concerned with the typology than the literal style. So it's really about the form of the building versus the level of gingerbread or lack thereof that they attach to that form.
I've read that in the past, or some historic districts, they do kind of the opposite. They say instead of trying to blend in to make a contrast, and I don't know that I buy into that particular philosophy myself. Is that okay?
So here's what I'll say is what's written and what gets implemented are two different things. I think most districts, you always know what the new house is. Even if they build it to look like an old house, you know what the new house looks. It doesn't have the sort of character Charm, little misalignments that an older house has. So you can always tell. Different, like Portsmouth actually wants more, I'll say, new construction in their historic district. And so they took it to that extreme. So that's Portsmouth, New Hampshire, wants newer buildings. Most places, the architects tend to go traditional, meaning they don't even push, even if you open up the door to it, they don't actually take you up on it. So I wouldn't quote unquote worry about it because it's kind of safer to just build something similar to something down the street, in all honesty. But in newer construction, the proportions of the sort of trim and details all just get a little bit smaller or just a little bit different. So you can always tell what's new.
Right.
In my experience. Let's see. So a new smaller building, and I'll use the term building instead of kind of shed structure, but things like garages and things, my feeling is they should generally be compatible with the style of whatever the house is. So utilize the same kind of form, materials, detailing, et cetera, as the house. Is that generally consistent with your thoughts?
Yes.
Okay. And are you concerned with regulating, I'll say, semi-permanent things like the above ground pools and all that? Or I know we talked about play equipment, no, but is there anything else, decks, in the landscape?
Mailbox posts?
You really want to go down mailbox posts?
No.
My recommendation is no, give somebody a freedom of expression. So with the exception of commercial buildings, I think we have covered everything that is on a residential property. Am I missing anything?
I think the decks, though, that might be something we might want
Yeah,
to
I
consider.
don't like above ground pool decks that look like, they're above.
Oh, I was thinking about decks coming off of a house where,
Oh,
if
I
they,
was
like,
thinking, yeah.
on the back of the house where you can't really see them as opposed to the front of the house or the side of the house.
So decks coming off the back of the house, we regulate in sort of the woodwork section because that's the porch, a deck and all of that. But some people do decks literally in the landscape, like a raised platform in the landscape. So not attached. And
I
given
just
your,
don't want to see somebody put a deck off the front of a historic house. That's all I'm saying. Like,
yeah, no, they don't worry. We won't encourage that at all. So I feel like we have covered the residential property.
I've got just, Dominique, excuse me, but
No problem.
we're seeing a lot of home heating system conversions, and some of the intake and exhaust is not through the chimney. What they're doing is they're putting these gas efficiency units in, and then they're running a 4-inch PVC, picking up some outdoor air, bringing that in, and then exhausting the gases through the PVC rather than the chimney. And out here, because of the snow, they're sort of, I don't know if it's mandated or just good common sense, they're trying to keep the intake and the exhaust at least 4 feet. But if the unit comes out at a foot off the ground, then you've got this 5-6 foot of pipe going up and another one with a 90-degree to get fresh air and to avoid snow packing up there and it's not breathing. Some of these are pretty outlandishly placed in the front or in the front portion of the side of the house, and boy, they stand right out when you're driving by. So would we want to address that? I'm asking this to the group. Would we want to just address that?
I
we
would
can-
say it's like everything else, like it needs to be, that kind of stuff needs to be where it's not seen, just like satellite dishes and that sort of thing. In the back.
We can include it as part of the equipment thing and include vents, etc.
Good,
So
because it doesn't matter, for the most part, it doesn't matter how far, as long as you've got a pitch on the pipe for exhaust. It doesn't matter if it extends 25, 30 feet in the basement before it goes outside.
okay.
So it might be something that, yes, we want those exhaust and intake openings or pipes to be placed in an inconspicuous manner, maybe vegetation in front of it, push it to the back of the building as much as possible. Just a thought
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Okay, I'm at a loss. I think.
I have one more.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
Sorry. This is probably moot, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. So one of the funny things in our neighborhood is that we have these commercial grade lamp posts in our sidewalk. And I know that we don't have any pull with the city to put something less offensive. But is there any language we could use to insert in the guidelines that could offer the Historic Commission at least some oversight if the city decides to come in and do streetscaping and they don't recognize that we're an historic district?
It's hard to do it in guidelines. I think you have to talk to Public Works, the equivalent of Public Works or streets, and ask if you can. One of the ways that you might be able to address it is to identify an alternative street light that you want And in, again, going back to the commercial zones that I've worked in, they've identified a package of stuff. So it's the garbage can, it's the street light, it's the bench, it's the whatever, all the street furniture, and basically said, this is the preferred stuff for this historic district. Some of those districts have raised money as the delta. I mean, even the street name posts, you know, the things that hold up the street names. So this is the preferred stuff that we want. And some of these districts have actually raised money and said, we'll pay the difference. If, you know, if one of them goes down, we want you to install what we like, and we'll give you, you know, pay whatever that delta is. You guys are installing it anyway, but we'll pay the difference in cost of material, so to speak. So that's a possibility, but partially I would start with just a conversation with them and say, hey, this is a different place. You know, we know what your standard is, but can we do something better? And they may say, oh, we didn't even think about it. You know, it may be something that it didn't even occur to them. And you might, you know, be able to integrate things like banners to, you know, announce the historic district, or, you know, something else as well, and make it a whole package. But to put it in the guidelines, you'll never get any traction because City Hall doesn't have to listen to you. I mean, is the short answer. I didn't want to burst the bubble right off, but
No,
there you
no,
go. The answer.
There's no bubble to burst. If that's all for residential, the next piece we're going to talk about is commercial. And this is where I am truly at a loss because I wasn't focused on it in my visit. However, given the power of the internet, I can do a certain amount, and then I'm going to have to rely on you guys to do the rest and be my legs. So I can, on Google Street View, kind of stand in the middle of the street and spin around and look at all your, you know, beautiful storefronts and your different kinds of signs and your gooseneck lighting and all this, you know, all the stuff, the street furniture of life, and be able to get a patchwork of kind of putting a guide together. And then, and it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but I've written enough of these that I could probably kind of guess most of what you're interested in. But I'm going to need a couple of things from you. One is addresses or streets or blocks where you think there's some successful examples of commercial structures, so I can at least have a place to aim and say, okay, you know, these parameters work. And it could be the name of a business, or a few businesses, hopefully in a row, so I can get a sense of how things move along the street. Some of the specific issues you wanted to address, one of the things you talked about is awnings, particularly in light of COVID, for diners outside in the evening, you know, if in inclement weather. But I'm assuming that you'll want to address signs and awnings and lighting are usually the typical things, and storefronts are usually the typical things that most people want to talk about. But if I have a sense of what you consider to be good examples, and again, I can do my street view to look at those, and then I can write something up, and it's probably going to be the section that needs the most work, but I don't know how to start without knowing what you really have, or what you consider to be good that you're trying to aspire to. So it may be a little back and forth, and then I'm going to ask you all to be my photographers, and then I'll Photoshop them and make them beautiful. So you don't have to worry about it.
So if we give you a range of streets and street numbers, that would be adequate for your street view.
Yeah, or even, yeah, or if you have the name of a business that you think, oh, they have a particularly nice sign, or we really like the way they did this.
Sure.
And so give me a few clues, and then that will guide me. And if you say, we like this about it, but we don't like that about it, it doesn't have to be complicated, right? You know, great sign, crappy lighting. I can figure that out. But that way, then I can sort of draft something up and then say, okay, here are the 10 photos I would like you all to run out and take for me, and then we'll populate the guide with some photos. So that should be able to get you a product that's usable in the end.
Okay.
Does that make
Sounds like a
sense?
plan. Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So, and I truly apologize. I did not understand that this was sort of part of the agenda when I was up there, because I certainly would have done that, but I was so focused on the historic district.
I actually didn't think it really was either.
Okay, well, but I don't like to disappoint, so I'm trying to please desperately.
And you're doing a good job. Thank you.
Well, I think everyone and everything has gotten more adaptable in this past year. So,
Well, I know I appreciate you taking that on, and we do have some nice examples that we can send your way.
okay, and that would be great. And most places are visible by Street View now, by Google. So if you're standing there anyway, use your cell phone. Just take it doesn't have to be a beautiful photo, but just enough to give me something to work with, and that would be really helpful. Okay, the introduction to these things is hard. It's the hardest thing to write, because what I try to do in the introduction is take not only your values in terms of what you're trying to do as a preservation organization and the importance of your city, and the historic properties in that context, but also interweave it with the regulatory requirements. And I'm not going to talk to you about it. I'm just going to write it, and then I'll let you guys tear it apart. So, but let me tell you, no, and I'm going to tell you why. Because what I have found consistently is that the way people regulate things and what their ordinance says are two different things. So I don't want you to tell me what you think the ordinance says. I'm going to write you what I read and what I understand your ordinance to say. And I will say, in all honesty, I've read over 100 preservation ordinances, so I kind of know the roadmap of this stuff. But a lot of places over-regulate beyond what they're legally allowed to regulate. So, having said that, it doesn't mean it's good or bad. It presents an opportunity. And the opportunity you have today, because you're in this process, is to shift how or what you regulate. So we can use this as I'm going to interpret your rules for you, and I'm going to tell you what your rules say as somebody who's an informed reader of these things. And then you'll say, wait a second, we thought we could do this, or we've been doing this and we could do that, or whatever it might be. And that can be a point where you decide we want to change what we're doing, maybe expand it, maybe contract it. I don't know the answer to that. Or we want to modify our ordinance to be different and to encompass more or encompass less. Or the procedure by which we do things can be modified to be clearer or streamlined or whatever. Is that fair?
Yes.
Perfect.
So, I think your values part of it is that you're trying to preserve the historic character of Fall River, particularly in the historic district, that you would prefer people to maintain historic materials whenever possible, replace materials only when necessary, and make alterations that are consistent with the historic character of that district. That's basically your values, right?
Yes.
Okay. So having said that, I'm going to take charge and just do it.
Good.
Yay.
Yay! So having said that, I'm going to be taking charge and doing it. Now having given you that huge preface where I'm going to tell you what's really in there versus what you think's in there. Is there anything you want to make sure I highlight? Are there any other programs that you know of in the city that are comparable programs or things? Like I mentioned, some places have shade tree commissions or other organizations that I should look to that complement you, or sustainability groups, or is there anything that
The Fall River Street Tree Program,
okay.
which isn't preservation, but it's such an important complementary sort of organization. And also the Community Preservation Committee,
Okay.
because they are the only preservation place to go in the city. We could mention others, but I think as when it comes to actual preservation, those are my two thoughts. Come on, everyone else must have other thoughts.
What about the Community Development Agency? They have a storefront program, but I don't know what they regulate. I don't know if there's any
Good point.
restrictions on it.
He has that program. I think it's completely underutilized.
But they may at some point start using it, and then that would be a good way to
got,
talk to some of the storefronts
The
about.
limit of that is like $2,500. Essentially, you can't do anything for $2,500.
You can get a new sign. You can get no, and I'm not kidding, because you can get rid of a bad sign. So
and maybe this is the in, Kristen. This is where we at least mention it, and maybe if it's in writing somewhere, people will take note.
Yeah, it might be worth it. And just because that's what the amount is now doesn't mean that later on the amount might not go up. And
So
it's
maybe that's the sort of thing
definitely
that's-
worth.
Maybe it's the sort of thing that CPA could, you get for business, you get a $2,500 grant from community development. Maybe that makes them eligible for an equal match from CPC.
So as you think about these groups and organizations and programs, why don't you just jot me a list and just send it to me in an email? And this is the last section I write, because I have to sort of live and churn the rest of it through my gut, so to speak, before I can write this. So I have to kind of get everything else down, because it's really it's really difficult to take all this and make it simple English for people to understand. So, okay. Do you guys have any questions, any thoughts, anything? Also, any tax credit programs?
We're excited. We're waiting and looking forward to it.
You're excited? You're waiting? Well, okay. So timing wise, I will tell you, I'm supposed to go to Europe, but I don't know if you heard the news today. Europe is closed, or it may be closed, or may not be closed. So my schedule in terms of waiting and timing, I'm not exactly sure what it is. I will be honest with you. So what I'm going to try to do is not necessarily dump it all on your lap at one point, but to give you sort of groups of sections, because it just, this is going to be a 100-page document. You don't want to read it all at once. I don't want to write it all at once, but I can write it in sort of groups and sections. So if you are amenable, I should be in a position. One last question. I'm sorry. We're going to go back. I have a question for you. And it was a question I asked at the beginning, I think, and I don't recall the answer. Many of these guidelines, I include a section about maintenance, maintaining buildings. And I include it as a separate section because in my mind, it's like a car maintenance manual. How do you look at your building and make sure that you're keeping up with the cleaning of the gutters and the repainting on a good cycle? Is that something you're interested in having as a standalone section or incorporated into each of the different sections?
I think that's a great standalone.
I think so too.
Rick?
Yeah, I do too. I think a standalone is good.
Okay. So the way I usually send stuff to people is sort of 2 to 3 sections at a time, which is kind of about 20-ish pages of stuff, because that's about 20 to 30 pages of stuff, because that's about as much as people can really sit down and read and pay attention to through this process. So I can, well, otherwise it just feels like, right? So I can start sending stuff probably towards the end of next week would be the earliest. And my current schedule is to go at the end of September to Europe. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. if I can go, I'm going.
Good for you. Good for you.
Well, I think it's going to be a long winter. I need to get away. So I think that's it. And if you have any questions, concerns, can I have one person who will be my facilitator person who I can ask them? Kristen, is that you? You'll be the conduit for all information?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So as I start sending up sections, what I'm going to ask you all to do is read them and send all comments to Kristen. So I get one set of comments back. I don't know who's going to be the, I'll say, editor to keep track of that.
I can do that.
Okay.
She loves editing us.
I do. I do.
Oh, terrific. Because after a while, I can't read my own stuff and I miss commas and all the terrible things of life. But if I end up getting, 5 different sets of comments, usually there's conflicting stuff in there. I can't deal with conflicting stuff.
Mhm.
I need to make sure this is as streamlined as possible. So if Kristen can take on that job, thank you very much. And what we'll do is we'll kind of roll through this and get to, a whole thing that actually works together. But I think we've covered all the points that we need to include. So I'm feeling good about it.
Yay.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, really.
You're welcome. So, and what I will tell you now, but you won't believe me until later, the conversation was the best part of this project because this actually forced you to sit down and actually talk to each other. And I tell all my clients that I'm offering you a facilitated conversation is what I'm giving you. The guidelines is just the result of it. So.
Good.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you all have a good night and that you don't get Ida's, wrath. But we're supposed to be it out on Wednesday.
Yay.
Hey,
Thank
you
you.
also
Thank you
stay
very
safe.
much.
So much.
Good
Okay.
night.
Good night now.
Right.
Good night, everyone.
No, Rick, we're not
No,
done.
Rick.
Oh,
We're not done.
I know you keep doing that.
We still have a meeting. No, we just have a couple of other things. So as far as the merger with the of the 2 commissions, I still have not heard anything back, and I did leave another message. So I'm gonna just try again tomorrow. I'm gonna actually email him again and see where we're at. But Connie, I know you were supposed to ask Chris Skelly about.
I did. I emailed
Oh.
him. I didn't get an email back. I had a list of questions. I don't have them in front of me right now.
Yeah.
To find out about, I can't remember now.
Well, it was on our oversight of the buildings on the National Register.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard back from him. I also have called the office and have not heard back from him.
I've had that same issue trying to get in touch with him in the past, so I understand because it's.
But I will reach out again with
Yeah.
a follow-up.
Okay. There's another name I may have somewhere in my files, and it's somebody else that I got in contact with about it was about the properties on the National Register. Let me just jot it down to remind myself to do it. It was a different name, and he called me and he also emailed me, and he was very helpful at the time because that's when I was trying to find out all of the properties that we have in the city that are on the register.
Oh, yes.
I have to look up.
I
his name.
recall. I
Yeah.
recall you telling me about that.
Yeah, but I have his name somewhere in my files, and I can look it up and send that to you tomorrow. I just made a note
Okay,
to do that.
sounds good.
So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I still have not heard back from Attorney Rumsey yet, so I'll reach out again tomorrow. Or it may have, actually tomorrow is kind of hectic. Wednesday, I'll reach out again and see. So I have no update as of that. Anybody else have anything regarding the merger? Okay,
Not the merger, but I could use that. I know you're busy, but I could use the name and telephone number for that commissioner in New Bedford.
Oh,
He or
okay.
she, whoever it is.
Yep. The historic planner,
Yes.
okay.
I-
Let me, I'm just jotting this down
Mhm.
in my to-do, okay.
Just email it, or leave it on the phone or whatever.
Yep.
Whatever works for you.
Okay. All right. And, okay, so we don't have any citizen input? No? Mr. Higgins has signed off? Okay. And I didn't get anything email for citizen input. New business, open discussion. I did receive an email about, from the lawyer for the hospital, for those buildings. I just received an email. He wants to, he does want to meet with us. He had seen, I know we had sent the registered letter, but the email made it sound like he hadn't gotten the letter yet, and he just happened to catch the meeting and saw our conversation. And he said he would be very happy to meet with us. So to send him the dates of the upcoming meetings. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna send him the September, October, and November meeting dates, and then
Are
hopefully,
those gonna be face to face?
I would like them to be. I mean, our plan is to have in-person meetings. This was just easier because Dominique is in Philadelphia. Obviously, we were not gonna have the meetings any other way. But it's also gonna depend on what happens with COVID. I know indoors now, the advisory was as of the 27th, all indoor public buildings, people were being advised, whether you're vaccinated or not, to wear a mask.
Right.
So, but I think in the atrium, we will probably have to do the masks. In the hearing room, I believe the partitions are still there, so I think in that case, we can take them off.
Yeah.
I don't know, but either way, our plan is to have the next couple of meetings in person, unless that changes based on what the city is saying at the time. So unless, do you guys have a preference?
I don't have.
Does anybody?
I'm zoomed out.
Yeah. I mean, Zoom is definitely nicer because you don't have to leave your house, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to communicate, especially, you never know with technical glitches and things freezing and chipmunks.
Squeaky voices.
Chipmunk.
So, yeah, so our plan is to have the next ones, when we adjourn, we'll give the next meeting dates. That's the plan. So he did reach out, and
That's good.
and then I also just got an email this afternoon, and it is from, like, I just got this. So Suffolk Construction, and he's reaching out about the demolition of the existing Durfee High School. So he's just looking for documentation that it is not on the register.
Oh, it is not. on the register.
Oh, I know. So I'm just letting you know that came in today. So I'm just going to send him a letter saying that it is not, and please knock it down as soon as possible.
Yeah, should we send him a thank you card? I mean.
I know.
Hell, I'll give him a bottle of champagne. Why not? God.
I know. The new building, actually, it is a very pretty building.
Mhm.
It definitely has a much a better look that fits in.
It's not hiding like the other one was behind houses and behind trees. This one's standing, front and center on Ellsbury. It looks fantastic.
Right, right. And I am definitely looking to see the way they incorporated some of the historical aspects into it, especially like from some of the old mills and things like that. I had the chance to see, the other night I went to the Flint Neighborhood Association meeting, and it was in the most recent mill that they did on Alden Street, 69 Alden. And I got to see the inside a little bit, and some of the old pieces of the mills and things that they had preserved, and they did a really nice job. It was nice to see that, and nice to see that there is still a focus on the preservation, even on the inside, where they're taking whether it be like a piece of a machine or some type of equipment and that, and leaving it there so people can see, hey, this is what went on in the building. And I know that somebody just bought the Flint mill, which is on the side of it, and the plan is to convert that as well. And I'm sure at some point we'll hear from them, because I imagine they're going to go for historic tax credits. And I love seeing the inside of those buildings when they're done, and I'm looking forward to seeing Durfee and how they tie some of the historic pieces in. So
Kristen, I posted some photos on my Facebook page a while. I thought I did. Carol Viola did a walkthrough a couple months ago. But it's fascinating because they use a lot of the lumber from the old King Philip Mill, the granite blocks from the city pier, and then some other items were incorporated.
yeah, I just want to see them up close, so like they're right there in front of you. I want to be able to to see that. And it'll be nice to be in the building. I went to the old Durfee, and be nice to see the difference between this one and that one. So that's all I have. I don't know if anybody else has anything for open discussion, new business. Okay. So our next scheduled meeting right now is Tuesday, September 21st, and that's going to be at 6 o'clock in the City Hall hearing room. And that will be for both commissions, assuming we do have something for the Historic District Commission. I know we don't always. And we certainly can do a joint meeting again, just for the sake of
Communication.
keeping, because if we can do it this way now, there's no reason why we can't just do the joint meetings going forward instead of the two separate ones.
I like that idea. I just feel like we are communicating with the two boards, communicating, especially as we are going to become one.
Right, and it's important that Jason is allowed to have a say. And I mean, if we're voting, certainly we vote separately as separate commissions, but I think the conversation is important, that we're all part of that conversation. And even for, if it's a district commission, it's important to hear what Ruben and Joyce have to say as far as the district. So going forward, I think, since we have the option to do it that way, that's what we'll do. So the plan is on the 21st, we will have a joint meeting at 6 p.m. in the hearing room, unless we're told otherwise. So if nothing else, I need a motion for the Historical Commission to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion for the Historical Commission to adjourn. May I get a second?
I'll second the Historic Commission adjournment.
Okay, so motion and a second. Roll call. Connie Soul,
Yes.
Rick Mancini,
Yes.
Ruben Amaral,
Yes.
Kristen Cantara Oliveri, yes. So motion to adjourn carries at 7:45. And can I get a motion for the Historic District Commission to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. So roll call. Connie Soul,
Yes.
Jason Bouchard-Naraki,
Yes.
Rick Mancini,
Yes.
Kristen Cantara Oliveri, yes. So the Historic District Commission adjourns at 7:45. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Okay.
Thank
Same
you.
to
Have a good night.
everyone. Have a good day and week.
Night, you too.